The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Yo, Philly, how you doing? Welcome to Philadelphia Baseball, past, present, and personal. I'm Bill Kashatus, your host on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. This season marks the 25th anniversary of the 1993 Phillies, that colorful band of throwbacks who went from worst to first to capture the National League pennant against the heavily favored Atlanta Braves. This week, I'm pleased to have as my guest Curt Schilling, the ace of the 93 Phillies, who went on to post Hall of Fame-worthy numbers with the Arizona Diamondbacks and Boston Red Sox. When he retired from the game after the 2007 season, Curt had posted 216 victories, over 3,000 strikeouts, and won 3 World Series titles, one in 2004 with Boston that broke the infamous 86-year championship drought attributed to the curse of the Bambino. Welcome to the show, Curt.
What's up?
Curt, you were a fairly young player on a veteran team in 1993. Were you inspired or intimidated by teammates like Darren Daulton, Lenny Dykstra, and John Kruk?
Well, I certainly wasn't intimidated. I don't know about inspired. I was trying to find my way. I was in a very different place in my career than a lot of the veterans on that team. So, I was just trying to establish myself, and so I didn't have a perspective like they had when I was with that club.
Mm-hmm. Things also came together for you in 1993. You were signed by the Boston Red Sox in 1986. You were traded to the Baltimore Orioles and then to the Houston Astros. And over that 4-year span, you compiled a win-loss record of 4-11. And then in 1992, you came to the Phillies and turned it around. How much of that was due to pitching coach Johnny Podres and some of the other characters like Darren Daulton?
All of it. I mean, Johnny Podres was probably the most significant reason and most influential person on me as a baseball player in my entire life, and outside of my father. And it was, he turned my career around in 20 minutes in Florida in a bullpen, literally the day I got traded over there, and never looked back.
How did he do that in 20 minutes in a bullpen session? How did he do that?
I went into the bullpen session to throw for them for the first time, and 20 minutes later when I was done, I felt like I could get anybody in the game out. I don't know what it was. He had a way of speaking to me that made me believe that something better was waiting for me if I was going to put that time and effort in, and I certainly was eager and anxious to do that. Mm-hmm.
You had also talked about the leadership of Darren Daulton as a big influence in your career. How so?
Well, I think from a leadership perspective, there was, I learned a lot from the veterans on that team about, Lenny taught me as much about pitching as any hitter I ever played with next to Manny. And Lenny was a baseball wizard, savant, and I talked to him often. Dave Hollins was kind of my guidepost to learning how to be a teammate and a big league player. And the other guys, Mickey Mordini's still a close friend, and our wives are close. And Todd Pratt was a lifelong friend who I'd played with in the minor leagues. So there was just a lot of different things from a lot of different angles. And I had a veteran coaching staff that was certainly conducive to learn. John Vukovic taught me the art and the skill of preparation, and I began to do those things, and just kind of became my routine.
Mm-hmm. Now, Curt, you began the 93 season with an 8-1 record and ended as the ace of the team with a 16-7 record. But in between, you lost 5 straight decisions.
Yep.
What happened?
Well, that was the worst. Probably. I remember sitting at 8-1, and I remember the day. I'll never forget it. And I was thinking about the All-Star game that year was in Baltimore. And I had been traded from the Orioles, and I remember thinking and talking to my wife and saying, God, I can't wait to go to the All-Star game. It's going to be so exciting, and da-da-da-da. I was 8-1, leading the league in ERA, and 5 starts later, I was 8-6 with a 4-something ERA. And I let it get away. I stopped focusing on the important stuff, started thinking about things I couldn't control, and it all kind of came to a head in St. Louis, where I went out and had a nightmarish day. And after the game, Darren called. Tommy and I were both struggling at the time, and Darren called me out. in the media. And I remember the media coming over to my locker and oh my God, Darren just said this about you, and they started running off these things he had said, and every one of the things he said was true. And I said, and they were looking at me like, oh my, what's he going to say? And I said, well, what do you want? And they're like, well, how do you feel? I said, well, he's right. And they kind of looked at me like, what? I was like, yeah, he's right. Everything he said is correct. I mean, I let it get away from me. I'm not focusing on the important stuff and blah, 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 and yada, yada. I just basically, he was right. And so, and Dutch knew he could do that with me and knew that I wasn't, I was not going to be impacted in any negative way from that. I was going to take that and I was going to use it. And, some other guys on that team probably wouldn't have handled that the same, but he knew he could do that with me. And I basically ended the interview saying, yeah, I will not lose a game in the second half. And I made it right up to my final start of the second half. I was 8-6 going into the break, and I ended up 16-7, I think. And that last game I lost to the Braves, so we ended up facing the playoffs.
A lot has been made about Lenny Dykstra being the red light player on that team. When the postseason was there and the camera lights were on, Lenny was going to come through, and he did. But that '93 season, you also established yourself as a red light player, and you took that on to Arizona. You took that on to Boston. But going into the postseason, the NLCS, the Phillies were facing a team that dominated baseball in the decade of the 1990s in the Atlanta Braves. And you started game one of that NLCS. It was Wednesday, October 6th at Veterans Stadium, and you went 8 strong innings. Talk a little bit about that game.
I remember. But yeah, I remember going in. I had a game plan and all the things around that, and it kind of started with a bang. I struck out the first 5 guys to start the game, and I struck out the side in the first inning and struck out I think Gant to end the inning. And after striking him out, the place was crazy. And hold on a second. Willow, go! God. And God dang it. Will you go, and stop? My God. Yep. Shut up.
Amazing.
Sorry. All right.
That's
Sorry about that. So anyway, Willow, shut up. Gosh. So anyway, I remember coming off the mound after the top of the first, and I realized that in the postseason, a pitcher can start momentum. I came out the field. We were going crazy. The place was loud. It was thunderous, and it was great. It was exciting. It was, everything I kind of hoped it would be, and we kind of went from there.
Now in the World Series, you shut out the Toronto Blue Jays, another magnificent team, probably the best team money could buy in 1993, and you shut them out on a 5-hitter in Game 5. What do you remember most about that game?
The night before. The night before we lost, we ended up losing. It was the game that cost us the World Series. I mean, we ended up losing 15-14. We blew 5-run lead, I think, 4 times, something that had never happened before and probably I don't think ever has happened since. And that was it for us. And I remember thinking that our bullpen was spent, and I remember thinking that the team was going to Toronto based on how well I played or didn't play, and I liked that. I was excited, and I mean, when you go back and look at that offense, my goodness, that was that was an offense that was it was. I don't know how to put it. It was you go back and look at it. You had Olrud and Alomar and Henderson and all these guys, and it was just an amazing offense. And it was. I think I threw 148 pitches that night, and every one of them was with everything I had. So it was an incredible experience.
Now you went on to pitch for the Phillies until midseason of 1997. And
midseason, actually 2000.
Was it 2000?
2000 is when I got traded.
Okay. To Arizona.
Right.
And the team just wasn't. It just wasn't successful with that period of time.
Well, we never had a commitment from the front office. I mean, as much as people would like to say, I never looked at it as the Giles family because I loved it, but that we never got the commitment from the front office that the players were asked to give, and that was disappointing to say the least. But it's I don't know how to put it other than that was the way it was, and you just kind of made do with it. And finally, I had a chance to change it and get out involved and get into a pennant race, and it happened.
What do you feel was your greatest accomplishment as Philly, Curt?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. I never looked at it like that. I guess I think more in the terms of getting than giving in that sense. I mean, the Phillies gave me a chance to be. Hold on one second. God dang it! Shut up, Willow.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's right.
No. So anyway, no, I don't know. I never looked at my time there like that. I looked at my time as I got so much. I mean, the fans were incredible to me, to my family. The fans were always good to me, and they had every reason not to be. I mean, it was a very tough year, a tough decade. We were consistently bad, and it was frustrating, but it was. I became a big leaguer in Philadelphia, and I'll be forever grateful.
One of the lasting, the enduring contributions you made when you were in Philadelphia was your community service work for ALS, and that was a major priority during your years in Philadelphia. And unlike many MLB players who simply give a name or give a donation to a charity, you gave sweat equity. I know that part of your attraction to that cause was your favorite player of all time, I believe, is Lou Gehrig.
Right.
But can you talk a little bit about how your interest began in ALS?
I met a patient, very simply. I met a patient, and I met a patient in 1992. I met a patient named Dick Bergeron, and it was a transcendent moment in our lives. I was looking for something to get involved in, something that was bigger than me, and he provided that, and it was something I'll be forever grateful for. And it was a very pivotal point in our lives, and it's a relationship we've gotten far more out of than we've ever put in, and I'll be forever grateful for that.
And you have continued this through Arizona and Boston, and it has expanded.
We started Curt's Pitch for ALS, which I donated $100 a strikeout and $1,000 a win. And I went on a decent little run for a couple of years, striking people out and all the things that go with that. And it was a pretty cool thing. And it was, we tried to keep it going as we traveled and as we played for other teams. And we got a chapter started in Arizona, and we got involved in Boston as well. And it's something I'm very, very proud of being a part of.
One of the things I found most refreshing about you, having written now about baseball and Phillies baseball for 20 years, is that you're a very candid person, and you have the reputation of being a direct and honest person. There are those, of course, who admire you because you speak out against things that hurt baseball, like steroid abuse. Do you feel that Major League Baseball purposely ignored that issue and neglected its responsibility to address the issue earlier?
No matter what you want to say about how baseball handled it, the fact of the matter is the players dropped the ball. We had a chance. Rick Helling stood up in a meeting in 1994 and demanded action that we never took, and that falls squarely on our shoulders. That'll never change, and I think that'll forever be the case. We had a chance to do something about it. We didn't do that, and the game suffered and that generation suffered. And the challenging part is when you look back, the best players of my generation, most of them were cheaters. And, there's nothing to do about it. Like I said, we had a chance to fix it and we didn't. And that I think falls on us.
Mm-hmm. Last question, and it's about the future and what it holds. You and Phillies manager Gabe Kapler were teammates with the Boston Red Sox in 2004. You've stayed in contact since then. And Kapler has said how much he admires your knowledge of pitching. Any chance that you might be reunited here in Philadelphia, perhaps as a Phillies pitching coach?
Well, they have a pitching coach right now, so they're doing fine. But I would absolutely drop everything in a heartbeat to be somebody like Gabe Kapler's pitching coach. Absolutely. I love what he's done. I loved him as a man, loved him as a teammate, loved him as a friend. I would in a heartbeat do what I could do to help him out if he ever asked. Same thing for Greg Counsell and Alex Cora. I mean, I played with those guys. I trust those guys, and I would absolutely do what I could do to help them if there was ever a request. So, yeah, I mean, it's always open on my end, I can tell you that.
Anything on in the future right now with baseball for you?
No, I'm doing a daily show on CRTV that started Monday called On the Clock with Steve Dace, and it's 20 minutes every day, and it's pretty much all baseball. Kind of a day-by-day, day-to-day thing, and we kind of run down things and then also talk about and give tips on daily fantasy and stuff like that, which is something I'm very significantly heavy into. And so, yeah, I mean, that's where I'm staying involved in sports and where I'm enjoying it.
Great. Curt, thanks for being with us and for all your contributions to Major League Baseball as well as Philadelphia. We're really fortunate to have you here in the 1990s. And thank you, Philly fans, for tuning in. See you next week for another podcast of Philadelphia Baseball, past, present, and personal. This is Bill Kashatus, rounding third and heading home on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network.